welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis James. With me, as always, is Dave Horowitz. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good. Hi, everyone.
And this week, we are going to be tackling The Social Network, which ostensibly is the story of Mark Zuckerberg, but it is really a biopic about the founding and creation and explosion of Facebook. It is written by Aaron Sorkin, who is one of my favorite writers, whether you're talking TV or movies. He did The West Wing, which is one of my favorite series. He did The American President, which is a Rob Reiner film I really love a lot. It is directed by David Fincher, which is funny to hear if you already had him in a box as the director of Seven and Zodiac and Alien 3. He is really known for gritty things. So this is more of a kinder, gentler David Fincher, I guess you could say, dealing with real people. I just want to say the tagline to the movie, which I think is really one of the best taglines to any movie I've ever heard. And it says, quote unquote, "You don't get to 500 million friends without making a few enemies."
Oh, that is pretty good.
Doesn't that say it?
That says a lot.
Yeah. So right off the bat, Dave, thumbs up on the movie or thumbs down?
Thumbs up. It had a secret weapon going for it. I thought it was a goofy movie about Facebook.
Oh, wow. You thought it was a wacky
like
comedy?
No, but I did think, though, that it was like somebody's like, there's a movie in here somewhere. And I don't really know the name Aaron Sorkin. And I know the name Aaron Sorkin. I'm lying.
Right.
I know it from 30 Rock, which you don't watch. But he did a cameo on 30 Rock. That was hilarious. Yeah. Liz Lemon goes to talk to him, and you know what he says? "Walk with me."
For those who don't know Aaron Sorkin, the walk and talk is his bread and butter. He raised it to an art form where characters walk and talk through hallways in movies and TV.
Yeah, so it was a fantastic scene where he said "walk with me," and then he does a whole Sorkin thing. And David Fincher is one of those names for me where I go, "Oh yeah, I know that name," and that's really all I know about David Fincher is that I know that name. But now you've done a little recap with some of his other films, and it makes sense that those films are as gritty as they are. It helped this movie not be like sort of a hokey, historic or biopic.
It was a lot more somber than you would expect it, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, so here I am expecting this sort of like recap of what happened with Facebook and not expecting a well-acted, well-shot, great music. I'm starting to think I just adore good dialogue, believable dialogue, or dialogue that's actual human beings would never use, and yet it works. And it opens with a long conversation with Zuckerberg and his girlfriend that immediately made me say, oh, this is a whole other movie than I thought it was.
Absolutely. And it's great that you mentioned that. It's a great tone setter at the very beginning of the movie. College era Mark Zuckerberg is at a table in a bar with his then girlfriend, and they're discussing getting into final clubs, which Mark Zuckerberg was obsessed with because he felt it was the only way to get ahead. So right away, Sorkin paints the picture. This is a guy obsessed with, quote unquote, making it, with being a success, with leapfrogging all of his classmates and trying to get into a more elite status in life and in school. And he's so combative with his girlfriend that she breaks up with him at the table, and she utters to him one of my favorite bits of dialogue in film. She says to him something like, but I think this is it, "You're probably going to be a very successful computer person." She calls him.
She says computer person,
but you're going to go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole.
Great line.
It becomes a great moment of power for the girl, but that power is short-lived because he then goes on the attack and proves what type of person he is to the audience. And aside from that, it becomes one more pound of weight on the chip on his shoulder. And it's something he carries with him through the end of the film. It is a great way to open the film, a great way to set the tone.
In essence, it's how the film closes. With that refresh button, he's refreshing. the page.
Yes, it's the first bookend. It lays out the first bookend perfectly.
It does a great job of defining who Zuckerberg is, but in several other ways, it also really demonstrates how socially inept he is, how bad he is at speaking to someone who's not attacking him, but treating everything they say as if it's an attack, only thinking about the topic he wants to think about and not the topic the person is talking to him about. I could see the filmmakers saying, I wish we could do a half an hour on their relationship before we start. And then Aaron Sorkin saying, I will write you a dinner that results in you knowing their entire relationship.
You have accurately summed up the genius of Aaron Sorkin. He can do 3 pages in a paragraph. He paints with words, so you get pastiche of who he was. You get so much about him through the dialogue, and not just the dialogue. So you get the conversation with his girlfriend at the time, which you would assume he was more friendly with and less socially awkward with than anyone else, and he's socially awkward as fuck. When he gets back to his dorm room, the name of his blog is Zuck on it. So right off the bat, it shows you that he gave his blog a name that is combative and that shows that he's an outsider. And then he uses it to create this kind of precursor of the ugliness of social media in a way where he's comparing girls. That shows you something else about him as well, how ugly he is and how hurtful he can be. And in a larger sense, if you're looking for the kind of like macro impacts of that section and this film as a whole, you have someone who is socially awkward, who is no good at interpersonal communication, building a contraption.
There you go.
Which is going to give birth to generations of people who are socially awkward and who have no idea how to interact and have no idea how to have interpersonal communication and who are cruel to each other and make really ugly comments to each other.
Here's the movie about a computer genius. What's the first sentence he writes on a computer? Erica Albrecht is a bitch.
Yeah.
Or a name like that. That's the first sentence he writes in this computer genius movie. And that's not by accident. And she points out later, you know, you called me a bitch on the internet. That's written in ink. That's forever. And underneath what's going on, it's saying, by the way, this movie's about the internet, and the internet turns out to suck in a lot of ways.
As long as we're talking about assholes, it's very brilliantly juxtaposed. We see Zuckerberg creating this heinous misogyny device, and it's intercut with the most exclusive club on Harvard bussing in girls to partake in their elitist shitbag party where they denigrate the women, they play poker, they do whatever they do, they're pompous asses. And so it shows you that no one there is really clean. You know, you can be this kind of asshole, or you could be this kind of an asshole. This is not a great advertisement for Ivy League schools in general, or Harvard specifically.
Certainly not.
These are the captains of industry, the leaders of America being spit out. And they're either manipulative and cold-blooded in one way, or they're manipulative and cold-blooded in another.
Yeah, it's not a great advertisement for this movie either. If you're looking for someone to like, every time someone's nice in this movie, they get screwed or they disappear immediately.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, she's gone. She gets denigrated and then pushed out of the movie. And Eduardo, who's decent, but at the same time, he's a victim of the same sort of gross desire to be part of something that isn't something worth being part of.
Mark Zuckerberg's friend, Eduardo Saverin, I see as the most tragic and even most pathetic figure in this movie. He's brilliantly played by Andrew Garfield. And one thing that comes across is that he's the only character in the entire movie that is a true friend to Mark Zuckerberg. And at times, Zuckerberg shows that he knows it, like the masthead of Facebook, and he has Eduardo Saverin, founder and CFO. And he's like, oh my God, you don't know what this will mean to my dad. And he goes, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
He knows it, but he immediately then uses that as currency to ask Eduardo for the entire email list to the Phoenix Society or whatever. Like, there's nothing that he gives where he doesn't take twice as much. So he's cold and manipulative, even with a great friend of his. But I'll say something in Zuckerberg's defense.
Oh, hold on. Want to say that again?
I will say something, and I can't believe I'm saying it, in Zuckerberg's defense. I wonder at times if it's possible for anyone to reach that level of fame and success and money in any arena, acting, writing, modeling, CFO, CEO, what have you, if you aren't manipulative and cold-blooded to a degree, or if you can't at least turn that switch on at times when you need it.
Yeah, and what happens if every time you turn that switch on, it makes you another $1 billion? What do you start doing? You're just like, I'm going to leave this on 11.
Yeah.
You also have to consider the fact, like, I can do this. I don't know if you can, but I can say I was in college. I was his age, and I was a dick. Like there were things.
I can't say that, Dave.
Yeah, good for you.
You're
Good
alone,
for
buddy.
you.
I know what you
No,
mean.
but part of being happy with who I am today is not being who I was then, and having made some progress. I don't doubt that that kind of success might lock you in to a early 20s ego. You're cocky, you think you're smarter than everybody else, and now you have $6 billion or whatever you have. You may not make a lot of progress after that because progress comes from struggle, and struggle is gone from your life at that point.
It's a good point.
All of this talk, and I think my main point about this is that I'm surprised how much I enjoyed this movie when you consider the fact that it was about people that I did not like.
It is a cinematic feat having characters that you don't identify with. I think if people like us watch it, we'd identify with Eduardo Saverin and we'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe he got screwed. Or, oh my God, why didn't you bring a lawyer? Or, oh, Jesus. Like, that's who I was identifying with. And it speaks well of the writer and director that they could craft a movie that you care about, that you're intrigued by, and that you enjoy watching with some despicable people doing despicable things.
It doesn't just punch them in the face the whole time. It's not like you're enjoying it because they're getting what for. Everybody's getting rich in this movie. Everybody's getting rich in this movie. Losing in this movie means only getting 6 million or 60 million.
Right.
That's losing in this movie.
Yeah.
Does this movie watch very differently for a trust fund kid who rose crew for Princeton? Is he watching this movie with a completely different brain than ours?
I think so. I think
it must not work for him. I mean, he might be like, this movie's not that good.
I think it works for him because he dislikes Zuckerberg too, just in a different way. He's like,
so he thinks the Winklevoss twins are like the heroes and who got screwed?
Well, all right, let me get into this. So I fucking love, there's one thing that Zuckerberg does in this film that I absolutely love and that made me like him for at least a little bit. He refers to the Winklevoss twins as the Winklevi.
The plural. Yeah, the
Winklevi. It's hysterical. And the Winklevoss twins, or the Winklevi, are played by Armie Hammer. What the filmmakers couldn't possibly know at the time is that Armie Hammer would have such a meteoric fall via social media that would make casting him as a pair of beautiful people with a sense of entitlement even more fitting. When you stop and think about that, it's just mind-boggling. But yeah, the Winklevoss twins, for those of you who haven't seen the film, are a couple of crew rowing Harvard pretty boys who, if you believe them, created with their pal Div the concept of the Facebook and approached Mark Zuckerberg with the idea because they heard Zuckerberg was a great coder, and Zuckerberg then took their idea, ghosted them, and created the Facebook and later Facebook all by himself. That is the story.
A little more than ghost them. I'll just add that he sort of intentionally keeps them on the line, almost like, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Ostensibly to stop them from finding someone else and moving forward with theirs so there's no competition.
Which I think is the main evidence to the fact that he knew he was stealing it. He knew if I finish this and they haven't even gotten started, I'll win.
Right. I'll say something else about the script, which I think is just a really crackling script. And I know this especially because this is not a topic of interest for me. It's not characters I want to spend all this kind of time with. And the movie just flew by. Here's another great part of the script. It was brilliant having the framing device being cutting back and forth from the deposition, which happens in what was supposed to be current time, and the events of the past where Mark, quote unquote, invented Facebook. So we establish that there's a battle going on. You don't know where it's going and you're intrigued. You're like, okay, it's headed here. That's interesting. Let's see how we got there. What a great device.
And normally when a movie jumps around, I immediately start to go, oh, this is going to be so annoying.
Yeah, you don't like that.
In fact, I think that maybe some of the movies I've seen that jump around maybe thought they could do this, that Fincher and Sorkin were doing, and maybe were wrong, because this jumping around clarifies. And crystal clear clarifies. It's like, oh, I wish I could step out of the movie and talk about the actual plot. You're like, oh my God, is that how it happened? And then they cut to the lawyer and the lawyer goes, tell me exactly how it happened. And you're like, oh, yay, that's exactly what I was just asking.
And it's a way of not only clarifying, but also getting a ton of exposition in without eating up a lot of screen time. And it's multiple depositions, because we see it's Eduardo Saverin, and then later we have the Winklevi with Div, their pal. It's just genius. I think we should also talk about the other kind of main actor in it, who is Justin Timberlake, who plays Sean Parker, the creator of Napster. I've never liked Sean Parker, the person. I think Justin Timberlake really played an asshole well, because I did not like him. But I must say, in general, I'm not a big fan of Justin Timberlake. He strikes me as not being all that far removed from that person.
Yeah. Justin Timberlake has done some great PR with me personally, with being very funny on SNL. And not being afraid to dress up as an omelet and sing "Bring It On" into Omeletville. Wasn't he? He was in a boy band, right? I mean, he
NSYNC.
Okay, so a member of NSYNC. So he went from I do not care at all about that guy to, oh, that guy's pretty good and he's funny. I really appreciate when one of these sort of singer, dancer guys goes on SNL and does a good job and does goofy stuff that doesn't make them look cool, and does it well. So he won me over a little bit as a person that way.
I don't care how funny he is on SNL. I'm team Britney Spears, and that guy's a dick.
There you go. There you go. No, I don't get to argue with that.
Yeah.
I honestly, if I had to pick a weakest link in the movie, though, I think I would pick Timberlake.
Yeah. He's so smarmy to the point of being over the top. Like,
his role's not that hard, and he doesn't do all that. And I also don't love his winning line, his $1 million isn't cool. $1 billion is cool. Everybody's like, oh, and I'm like, what? That's not a great line.
No, it's not.
That's not a great line at all. A great line is, I want to send the Sopranos down there to kick their asses. I don't need someone to kick their asses. I'm 6'2", 240, and there's two of me.
Yep. The Winklevoss.
That might be the best line in the movie.
It's a great line.
Speaking of movies of great line, as I was watching this movie, I was thinking, I have to ask Hollis about this. It's the Sorkin dialogue that I'm loving.
Yes.
I keep thinking of Sweet Smell of Success. It's about a thing that I don't care that much about. PR. But good dialogue means I don't really care what you're talking about. I just love what you're talking. That line, one of the Winklevoss twins says, I'm 6'4", 240, and there's two of me. It's not just a great zinger, a great line. It says a lot. Like, their twinness is weird.
Yeah.
There's a weird, like, we are one person.
Right. And when he says it, he's not playing for the laugh. No one laughs in that scene. He means it. It's logic. He's like, yeah, I could kick his ass by myself. And wait, there's two of me. Like, why not use this? Physically, we can deal with this. We're athletes. We're built to deal with stuff like this.
This is during a discussion where he's explaining that we are Harvard men.
Men of Harvard.
We don't beat people up. We don't sue people. I mean, he starts off really trying to be the better man.
It's great. And all right, let's talk Winklevi. They are so wonderfully drawn. I don't know if they're like this or not, but Sorkin's Winklevoss twins are really interesting to me because they have the twin thing. They can speak for each other. They kind of feel each other's thoughts, yet they're not the same person. So one is headstrong and wants to go Tony Soprano on his ass, and the other is cool, calm, and collected and wants to go through the proper channels.
Mm-hmm.
They each have different relationships to everyone around them. One of the best scenes is them in like the dean's office or whatever. They're trying to make a case that Zuckerberg should be disciplined or kicked out of college or something. The guy behind the desk is so dismissive of them. And they're like, we're talking about millions of dollars. And the guy is like, millions of dollars, I think you might be a little misguided. And he's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, I was Treasury Secretary. I think I know what I'm talking about. And it's like, forget millions. We're talking billions with Facebook. Yeah. So it's just
tens of billions.
Yeah. And then later, when we see the Winklevoss twins and they go to London to crew against, this British team, they lose. That tells you something about them too. They lose by a hair. They're a little late, just like with Facebook. It's a subtle thing, but I love that. And then they have to listen to everybody being like, oh, what a great race, such a strong race. And they're like, if I have to hear how we lost again, and it's like,
oh, perfect. But you will hear.
You will.
And he literally goes in the other room directly after that conversation and finds out that the two of them are late to another situation.
They find out when they're in London, Facebook is now global because kids at the university, they are doing it. Mm-hmm. It's their second defeat right after their crewing defeat. It's so well done. And then when they're sitting opposite him in the deposition, and Zuckerberg's like, if you had created Facebook, you would have created Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of a mic drop in one sense.
We don't need a forensic scientist to come in here and figure out whether or not you guys created Facebook. If you created Facebook, you would have created Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
It's great. And he's right. Because what is the one thing that every college is full of, every business, every town like Hollywood is full of, is that these ideas bounce around from person to person. Deep Impact, Armageddon, they come out like the same time.
You hear about races all the time. So-and-so was working on this film and he was in a hurry because so-and-so was working on this film. There's constantly races
always
in filmmaking. And I'm sure there are technology races, obviously.
And also, Zuckerberg's point is, not only didn't he not create Facebook, those guys didn't create MySpace right after it. They didn't create Friendster. They didn't create anything that came after. So it's not like, it's almost like me being like, I have this fantastic idea for a cabinet. Just because I have that idea doesn't mean anything because I'm not a carpenter. Mm-hmm. Zuckerberg has a right to take a basic idea. Oh yeah, that would be okay. And that stands on the shoulders of what Zuckerberg did with the computer, with the misogyny kind of site he created, a lot more than the basic idea the Winklevoss team had. It's not in their bailiwick. They're not technocrats.
He has a right to build it on his own, but he doesn't have a right to make them spin their wheels for 40 days while he does it. That's his crime. His crime isn't making the thing that they were also going to make. His crime is intentionally stalling them so that they were not in the race. He kept them out of the race.
Here's the interesting thing about that. I don't know that any law is worded to protect that. But even if it were, some sort of deception that goes on in business, Zuckerberg's argument, as I understand it, is that, they had an idea for something. I thought their idea was stupid. So I built a better idea and I was working on that. And I told them, I'm going to get to your idea, but I just figured they'd go away. I don't know if that's defensible or not from a legal standpoint. But I do know that I kind of side with Zuckerberg from a creator standpoint. We're people who create things.
The right person, in this case, the right person walks away with the money because it was the clickety guy, not the drinks and cigars. We should make a blah, blah, blah guy. The guy with the clickety and the understanding we need this algorithm. It was the actual artist who got to create the thing and got the payoff. But again, everyone involved is an asshole. Yeah. Because it's billions of dollars and millions of dollars. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to be like, oh, tough loss. And he was forced to pay $60 million of his billions. Like, oh, poor baby. It's not a lot of sympathy for these guys.
Yeah. When the Winklevoss twins' friend, Div, he says to Zuckerberg in the deposition, I can't wait to stand over you and watch you write us a check. And Zuckerberg's like, yeah, no shit. Because Zuckerberg knows it's going to be like a parking fine. Like to him, it's going to be like $50 writing 60 million or whatever on a check. And so Zuckerberg acts like he's miserable in the deposition, but I think a part of him loves it.
I think you're right.
I think a part
He's
of him,
putting them through.
He's putting them through it. He's like, it's more annoying for them. He can go on and check his Facebook and, doodle. For these guys, they have a horse in this race.
If they get a lot from him, their life is extra good. If they get a little, their life is a little worse. Zero effect on him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's actually there to make them work for it. He knows he's got to give it to them,
right?
But he's going to make them work for it. And he's going to make things like losing a crew. He's going to make them relive all these.
Well, that's what I was going to say is he's also enjoying himself because he gets to confront the Winklevoss twins in a very safe atmosphere.
Nobody's taking a swing at him.
He gets to throw darts at them across the table with a bunch of legal people who are like, taking down everything. So if anything, the Winklevoss twins in their mind have Zuckerberg right where they want him finally. And in Zuckerberg's mind, he has the Winklevoss twins in a perfect position to watch Zuckerberg take a victory lap.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah. He knows himself. We keep forgetting to say Aaron Sorkin's Zuckerberg. Aaron Sorkin's Zuckerberg.
Right, because this is not necessarily him.
I've seen Zuckerberg speak, and I've never heard him utter a pithy sentence.
No. In fact, at this point, I should say that this movie is based upon the book, The Accidental Millionaire by Ben Metzrich. So this is Aaron Sorkin's Mark Zuckerberg, as well as the author of that book. I don't know how accurate it is, but I suspect with this many deposition people involved and this many people who knew Zuckerberg actually willing to talk on and off the record, I would imagine there are a lot of truthful things in it.
I'm sure the timeline is a little squished together. And I knew some stories from when it was an interesting thing because Facebook was on the rise.
Right.
And we were just the right age to not be young when it's happening. So we're sort of looking at it with an adult eye and skeptical eye. And, you were DJing, I was bartending. We have friends who are in bands. So there's a lot of promotion going on. And I think a lot of us would never have gone on MySpace, would never have been on Facebook until our bosses and our friends in bands started asking us to. That's how I became Dave Himself, my internet name, because people with bands would call me and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you go to MySpace, make an account, and then like our band?
Yeah.
And I remember the very first person who called me to do that, I said, sure, no problem. And I typed it. It said, first name, Dave, last name, Horowitz, backspace, 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 himself. And I misspelled himself, and I wrote himself.
Oh, and you misspelled it how a lot of people misspell it.
Yeah, it's a common misspelling, like teh, like TEH for the.
Right.
So then I had Dave himself, but my point being that we were around for this, the rise of Facebook. And like I said, we wouldn't have cared that much about social media, except that it affected our jobs.
Yeah, promoting things. You mentioned music earlier. I want to call out the music because it is done by Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails and his musical partner, Atticus Ross. And those two, as far as I know, do every David Fincher film, music-wise. It's really interesting because I said the types of films that David Fincher is known for.
And then I can see Trent Reznor for those.
You can see it.
Right now, my brain is going, I don't remember hearing any.
Right.
I don't remember hearing any Trent Reznor, and there wasn't any.
He usually does music for these gritty films, and it fits like a glove. And for this one, he pulled back a little. He let up on the throttle, and it works perfectly because there's so much malevolent stuff happening at a business table. You hear the foreboding music, you hear the mood pieces, the tone poems, and it really keys you in to the mood of different scenes. It should not work as well as it does, but it really works extraordinarily well. At its heart, this is a pretty ugly story.
I vaguely remember the opening scene that we talked about with him and his girlfriend having drinks. I think I remember that there was a soundscape. It followed him out of the restaurant and up to his dorm room, and he's angrier and angrier. He's running up there to badmouth her on the internet, and that music got uglier and uglier.
Yes, I mean, that shows you a real attention to detail, which I love. The music should be the theme music for the characters. Really deftly done, because I mean this to be high praise, nothing stands out to me in the
Oh,
musical.
really? 'Cause
You can think of a specific scene?
I can think of a specific rule they broke that Hollis doesn't like broken. They broke a
Oh.
Hollis rule, and you know what it is, don't you?
Which song did they use?
They went to California.
Oh, California Uber
They were like,
Alles.
"We're going to California."
Yeah.
California.
Yeah, they picked it.
Immediately.
And I guarantee you, no one in that fucking Harvard class knows who the dead Kennedys were. It's
Then they
true.
get to California and they're poolside, and it's, I don't know the title of that song. California knows how to party. California
Yeah.
knows how to party.
California Love, I believe, is the name of that song.
Oh, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
So that was a cardinal rule, playing
Well,
California
you know what
Uber
though?
Alles.
That works. I'm against it when the filmmakers do something and they don't know what they're doing. I'm for it when the characters are supposed to be so dumb they don't understand it or don't get it.
And
You
these
know,
are
so
college
like,
kids.
oh, this has the word California in it, so
Right, yeah,
I can give them
yeah.
a pass.
And you know, this movie does bring up, remind yourself, these are college kids. You know, oh, why is he being such a dick? Oh, why is he being so short-sighted? Oh, why, you know, people are still figuring themselves out at that age.
I would hate to have come of age in a time of social media, having all your mistakes be public. It's funny because when they go to California, if the film had started that way, you would have thought that you were getting exactly the film you expected, which is some dickhead
Zip line into the swimming pool.
Yes, because from that moment, the second they hit California, it's almost like you're watching Knocked Up. And it's a bunch of guys, goofy guys living in a party house trying to create a website, you know? And it's this kind of Silicon Valley.com bubble bullshit that we've seen a million times. But I love that that's instantly subverted because Eduardo arrives and then it's like dark again. And it just shows you that what you were saying, these are college kids. They're playing at being adults. They're playing at being CEOs and CFOs. They don't know what those abbreviations mean yet. They haven't lived them. They went to see Bill Gates talk at their college. And so they all want that story for themselves. And they all want to be Steve Jobs. And they all want to have these titles. They didn't earn the titles. They are playing at being adults. Don't even graduate.
Yeah.
They're not done baking.
It is nice that the film Fincher and Sorkin don't wallow in the partying. There's a name for those houses where they put in a bunch of tech people and like incubator or something like that.
Right.
Like this startup money fancy house in California. You're so right. They didn't wallow in it. They were like, we're going to give you the drinking and the bong hits and the zip line and the enter Wardo. Wardo enters. It's dark.
Yeah. It's good because that is a big part of it. You know, they work hard and they party hard. They get wired in and then they blow off steam. It's good that they portrayed it. But again, like just enough. They showed just enough. One other point I wanted to make about this genius of a script, a tech biopic, which is paying tribute and lovingly unraveling the story of how this social media site came to be. And this social media site was a destroyer, one of many destroyers of people's attention spans. You hop on other people's pages, you answer quickly, stories pop up. And this script is almost designed to play to that limited attention span. It hops around. You're in the past, you're in the future. You're going from one dorm room to another. The montage, although it's an ugly endeavor, the montage of Zuckerberg creating that misogyny machine that compared girls and the way he was keeping a running diary on his blog is masterful.
It's a risky move in that someone like me, I dislike jumping around in a movie. I very much do not mind slow plotting exposition. And when movies start to jump around, I can get nervous. I just saw Oppenheimer. My God, does that movie jump around?
Oh yeah,
Um,
it didn't look like my cup of tea.
yeah, well, maybe give it a shot at some point. I did enjoy it, but the jumping around, it took me half the movie to get used to it. Whereas this movie, the movie was smooth as silk. If you do it right, it doesn't feel like jumping around. I never felt lurched into any particular time frame, which happens to me a lot when movies jump around. Wait, oh, it's older him. Wait, oh, it's younger him.
Right.
Uh, you know,
Or
uh,
they have to continually put, fall of 92 and
Yeah, right, or
yeah,
they label it, yeah, and I
right.
also don't like the excuse of, like, "Keep watching, you'll get the hang of it." It's like, I don't wanna learn
No.
how to watch your movie. Make it enjoyable from the get-go.
As we had said, this tells the story and it unravels over time. The big personal disappointment in Eduardo Saverin's life is when, being the good friend of Mark Zuckerberg, he was the first investor prior to any real money coming along. And he was out trying to find investors and not having much success. And then Sean Parker came in, undercut him, found an angel investor whose first job became gutting the real value of Eduardo Saverin's stake in the company, in which Eduardo Saverin plays an unwitting accomplice. And that is one of the cruelest and hardest to watch scenes in this whole movie, filled with mean and cutting moments, because we're watching this innocent character, again, acting as if he's an adult, acting as if he's already made it in the business world and has done 1,000 deals, sitting with two sharks, two lawyer sharks, who put this piece of paper in front of him, or a bunch of papers in front of him that he doesn't understand, and they play to his ego, and they say, oh my God, it's so great to have, finance majors who I don't have to explain everything. And Eduardo, unwittingly in that moment, is signing away most or all of his money and power. And it is gut wrenching to watch.
Mm.
And later, when he finds out, he comes at Mark Zuckerberg and explodes and slams the laptop. And it's the only moment in the whole movie where you see Mark Zuckerberg actively scared. Jesse Eisenberg jumps and he looks with fear in his eyes. And Sean Parker for that moment too. On his way out, Saverin makes him flinch
Yeah,
like he's going to hit him. And we see who Sean Parker really is in that moment.
that was satisfying, that was
It was
nice.
satisfying momentarily, but
Yeah.
that was the hardest scene for me, is the gutting of Eduardo Saverin's investment and power.
It was a string of scenes starting with, "Who's this Saverin guy?"
Oh, an ugly question that hangs over it and then they cut. That's the
Yeah,
last
and
thing we
that's
hear in
it.
that scene.
That's the moment, and it's not anything but, "This guy has to go. This guy has to go."
This guy has too much money. This
Mhm.
guy is entitled to too much. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't be misled. It was an
And
executed plan of execution.
yes. And let me just say, the question that Dave uttered is uttered by the angel investor who was clearly prepped by the Sean Parker character, who does not like Eduardo Saverin and saw him as a threat. But Mark Zuckerberg is in that room. And this is the true cruelty of Mark Zuckerberg. He very easily could have protected Eduardo in that moment, or at very least bumped him down to 10%, or even 6%, like his friend was getting and Sean was getting. Instead, Saverin's stock becomes almost totally worthless. And that is all because of Zuckerberg doing nothing.
Yeah,
I was
so
just going to say that line of like, all it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing.
he does nothing. And why does he do nothing? Because he's enamored. He's enamored by the inventor of Napster, and he's enamored by an angel investor who has the capability of casually writing a check for $500,000, $500,000. Zuckerberg is such a dick to everyone and looks down on everyone, and the people he chooses to look up to are disgusting. I mean, that's his motivation to be like them.
Dave,
Yeah.
help me out. Here's what I don't get. I'm somebody who, if I won the Powerball tomorrow and I had 500 million in bank, I would instantly be like, okay, how many friends do I have with bands? And I bankroll the band for however, like you get 1 million. All right, who do I have that I know is dying to do a movie or to put up a play? Or, all right, here's money for that. I don't understand someone like Zuckerberg, if this story is based in actual fact, where 2 years after Facebook becomes what Facebook has become, you don't say to yourself, hey, Wardo, sorry about everything. Here's 50 million. I don't understand that.
You shouldn't understand it. It's ununderstandable. When I say these people aren't likable, these people are disgusting. These people are pathetic.
But even within the victims, why does Eduardo have to take Zuckerberg to court like he's one of the Winklevoss twins?
Even for selfish reasons, you could give Wardo money. Selfish being,
Yeah.
I don't want the world to think I'm crappy. You can erase that by just giving him a giant
even if
gift,
it's for show,
which is tiny to you.
Yes.
Before you watch this movie, you may want to look at the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. If you're cloudy at all, if you're cloudy at all on
that's
on
worth
the difference
knowing.
between, yeah, it's an important difference. You can give millions and millions and millions of your billions away and never feel it. And the people who have billions never, ever do that. The few that do get credit. You know, Gates has done a lot of good things with his money. They already don't need money. They just, it's bizarre. It's hard for me to get my head around.
I think they're trying to draw the line, too, that there's a difference when they began in college between Zuckerberg and the Winklevoss twins and Eduardo Saverin. I think they're trying to say everyone came from true money except for Zuckerberg. But even him, compared to me, I'm sure his parents had money. They were comfortable. You know, everything is relative. But I think that's kind of the argument that they were making, was almost like, well, he's always going to have that chip on his shoulder. But I'm someone telling you, from someone who grew up poor. I remember eating whipped cream sandwiches. I thought they were a treat when I was young. I'm like, why don't you ever make them anymore? It's like, we were poor. So anyway, I know what it's like to be poor. So compared to me, Zuckerberg was always rich. But it's funny that it's all relative. They were trying to draw the line between Zuckerberg's lack of money, or lack in general, and the Winklevoss's entitlement and money, which flipped on its head, all due to Facebook.
And you can look at that and say, what a strange endeavor to take a room full of extremely rich people and then be like, this is the underdog, the least rich of the rich people.
He's the poor kid in Harvard.
He's set for life. He's a genius. He's at Harvard. He's all set.
So let's wrap up. At the end of the film, one of the legal aides, played by Rashida Jones, has been chatting with Mark Zuckerberg throughout the film, and they are left alone together. They have a lovely moment at the end that gives Zuckerberg's character a moment of clarity. It results in Mark Zuckerberg, I think, or at least I drew from it, kind of making his peace with, all right, you know what, I'll have to break off a little something for everybody. In the big scheme of things, it doesn't matter, I win. But also, it rekindles his longing for the original girlfriend who broke up with him at film's beginning. First of all, she's on Facebook, so he couldn't have hurt her too bad.
There's a level of forgiveness there, right?
Right.
He's like, okay, she exists on Facebook, so she didn't despise me enough to not use my item.
Yeah, and he's big-headed enough to immediately draw that conclusion. And so he requests her friendship. That's how the movie ends, is him refreshing over and over, trying to see if she accepted his invitation, which is a reminder that the character of Mark Zuckerberg, as drawn in this movie, is exactly where he was at the beginning. All of the riches and all of the success has not helped him to evolve internally at all with regard to emotion, with regard to human interpersonal communication, and with regard to any form of regret or any form of apology that he might make to others. He's just like, well, some time has passed. She's probably cooled down now.
And this speaks to what I said earlier. All of what has happened, all of this success, all of these breakthroughs may have frozen him in that mindset. I think his success may have prevented him from becoming a better person.
He's trapped in amber, a victim of his success in a way.
I honestly think that when you're down, you learn to have some sympathy for people who are down a lot.
Success does not help you evolve at all. Failure equals growth in a lot of ways.
Johnny Lupiani says it's all in the struggle. Struggling builds character.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's parts of a character that are built through success, but not a lot. And
No.
certainly not things like compassion and charity and empathy. You're not learning a lot of those things via your success. And you're right. I mean, the movie is bookended by an identical, pining, unsatisfied, unhappy, alone Mark Zuckerberg, or Sorkin's Mark Zuckerberg. From beginning to end, the point that gets laid out is all that success, all that excitement, all that hard work didn't get him what he wanted.
Yeah. The Mark Zuckerberg in real life is different from the Mark Zuckerberg clearly in this movie and in the book based on it. You can't capture everything about someone. You can capture their essence. And I could believe this is the essence of Mark Zuckerberg as he was in college and a little bit of how he was after college. But I think he's shown in the years since, he has a lot of complexity to him. Yes, he has done some altruistic things and some things Bill Gates has shown the way on, but he also has done some questionable things. And there are questions of privacy, and there are questions of proprietary information, and there are questions of how certain things are presented and how algorithms work, and some nefarious things that are going on that speak to who he is as well. So I think he's still a very complex character that we probably couldn't get a handle on if we had 3 more biopics.
Yeah, we can't get a handle on. We can't get our head around. When you own a business that the government of the largest population on the planet calls you and says, "Hey, can you turn off Facebook where we are? We're having some problems over here." And you go, "Sure."
Yeah.
And you flip a switch and you lock the people out from one of the ways they can communicate. Now, I don't remember specifics but I do know that these guys often don't do the right thing. China can say to Mark Zuckerberg, if you ever want your thing operating here, which makes you billions of dollars, you're going to do what we ask when we ask you. And all of these guys go, "Oh, right away, sir." It's at a level that we can't even imagine, is what I'm saying.
Well, you and I are both big fans of Instagram. It's the place that I'm more comfortable now, even than Facebook, because everybody's parent is on Facebook now. Facebook to me is not like a cool thing anymore. I wonder if it will transform or if it's going to just be the next MySpace. It seems like there's some sort of infrastructure that will stop Facebook from ever truly disappearing now.
I thought it would have been gone by now. I thought something would have been in its place by now.
Real life comes to mind.
Yeah. When Twitter first started getting popular, I thought that Twitter might become something that would replace Facebook and then same for Instagram. But yeah, I think we could be wrong, but I think Facebook may have gotten some kind of toehold that's unbreakable.
It seems like
it. And we may be stuck with it. But
well,
we'll
congratulations, see. Mark Zuckerberg. We're stuck with you.
You win again.
You win again.
Or you win this once.
You win this round, Mark Zuckerberg. This 15-year round.
But I don't like anyone in this movie. Like I've said this a couple of times. These are bad people.
I love your movie review, Dave Horowitz. I don't like anyone in this movie. One thumb way up.
Love the movie. Don't like anyone in it. If I could say one thing to Mark Zuckerberg, I would say, Facebook, that's all you got? I thought you were a genius. One idea. Yeah, one idea. You afraid to try anything else?
This guy can't even crew. Why don't we leave it there?
Always a pleasure.
I will
Hollis.
hit you up on Facebook.
Please don't. I'll see you.
Take care.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.